In today's transmission, I talk about near-death experiences, teaching myself how to astral travel, learning how to take wild leaps of faith and testing the hypothesis that everything always works out, and learning how to embrace my emotions, even the shitty ones. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Cult. I am Divinity playing the role of Matt Owens today. Good to see you. I just got back from a walk, and I've been thinking a lot about the game. I've decided that's what I'm going to start calling reality these days because I think it's just a game. I've talked a lot in previous transmissions about how I think that there's a probability that we're living in a simulation, and what do I do with that information? Let's say that we truly are living in this simulation. Great. Is that going to change how I live my life? And the answer is yes. Yes, it has definitely changed the way I started living my life. About 2 years ago, I started really getting into just Eastern philosophies and diving real deep on mysticism, the pre-Christians and Egyptian beliefs and the Mesopotamians and ancient Greece and Plato's philosophies and Socrates. And I just went real deep. I love all of that stuff. And a couple of years ago, I made a decision to start applying those things to my life, because it's one thing to learn about them philosophically, to think about them academically, to read about it, but it's another thing to actually apply it to my life. And so I started playing around with that. I started taking some of these ancient philosophies about life, taking what the Bible said about life, diving into the ancient scriptures that were left out of the Bible, the Nag Hammadi library and the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc. And I started finding ways that I could apply it to my life, and I started looking for patterns. Because there's all these ancient civilizations that didn't have any real contact with each other, and yet they all have these same core philosophies. So I started looking for these patterns in their philosophies, running it through my intuition, and seeing if I want to apply that to my life. And what many of these ancient philosophies talk about is that this is not real life. My obsession du jour is going online and listening to people's testimonials who have had near-death experiences, or those that are able to astral travel, astral project, the ability to have your spirit taken out of your physical body, either by accident or death, or some people are able to do it naturally, and some people have to work at it and are able to build up to it, to a place where they can astral project. So all of these things interest me, but as I'm listening to all of these people's stories, not just the ancient philosophers, but also the people who have been to the other side, they all talk about this being a grand illusion, that it's not what we think that it is, that we take things here on this side way too seriously. The things that we think are important are not actually important. So I started thinking, how can I apply this to my life? How can I alter and change my life to reflect that attitude? That the spirits and the angels and Jesus and whoever is over on the other side is telling us, interdimensional entities, I don't know. I honestly think that some people see these interdimensional beings and interpret them as Jesus, or interpret them as, Buddha or angels or their ancestors, or I think whatever brings them peace and calm, that is what they see before them. So some people see angels and call them angels. Some people see Jesus. But I believe that there are beings out there on the other side that are watching us and taking care of us. And there's absolutely nothing to worry about. And so as I start sort of putting this all together, listening to people's trips on psychedelics, people who've taken mushrooms or LSD or DMT or, the list is long. All the fun stuff. People who have taken those psychedelics also report very similar things to people who have gone out of body or gone to the other side. They come back with their lives changed forever, oftentimes. They often consider their psychedelic trip a mystical experience or miraculous or, life-changing, life-altering. Because you start to see that perhaps none of this matters in the way that we think that it does. And so the way that I started playing the game differently, reframing it that we are actually in a simulation, what am I going to do with that information? Well, with my personality, I want to test that shit out. I want to push all the buttons and pull the levers and do all the things like what happens when I do this? What happens when I do that? In the spiritual community, I hear a lot about how everything always works out. I had to test that for myself. And I urge you, don't take my word for it. Try it out for yourself. Don't take anybody's word for anything. That's how I live my life. I question literally everything. It's just me, my higher self, my intuition. We're on a little journey over here. I want to test these things for myself. See them, feel them, taste them, touch them. Experience all of them for myself. I have yet to astral project. That's on my to-do list. I'm currently working on it. It's my latest project, and I will definitely report back to you when and if I pop out of this body and have something to report from the other side. I promise to take lots of notes, you guys. But that's what I'm currently working on because I think there's something to it. And I feel led to it. It feels natural. So I'm going for it. Because I want to, it's one thing to hear about these experiences. It's another thing to experience it myself. So that's what I'm doing. So I had to actually test out this hypothesis that everything always works out. And I bravely / stupidly asked the universe to give me more scenarios where I could practice this hypothesis, where I could be shown that everything works out. And in order for that to happen, some quote unquote bad things had to happen in my life. I had to throw myself in front of the bus metaphorically, spiritually, in order to see, does it actually work out? Does the universe actually course correct my life to get me to where I need to go? What happens if I drive way off course? How far off course can I go before I'm corrected back on course? Maybe never. Maybe I go off the deep end. Maybe that's the fear, right? That's what many religious doctrine will tell you, that there's a right path and a wrong path. That if you veer too far off the right path, there's no hope for you anymore. You're a lost soul, a lost cause. What I've learned as a part of my journey is the opposite. That I'm always exactly where I need to be. I'm always on the right path. And that may not resonate for you. That may not fit into your belief systems. That's cool. We're just talking about me today. And so I started testing it out. What happens if I veer wildly off course from how I've been living my life? That's what I did 2 years ago in my life. For those of you that have been following me and know me in real life, perhaps, the course that my life took was wildly different than it had been previously. And the reason for that is because I felt led to do so. I'm testing out this reality that we're in because as I'm sort of testing things out and feeling things out, getting to know the game a little bit better, I'm realizing that I was told a certain set of rules that might not have particularly been true. I've started playing by a different set of rules, I feel like. And that's why to many people in my life, my actions seem insane because I'm literally playing by I'm playing a different game. I've left the table. I've sat down at a different table. And a lot of times I'm sitting at that table by myself. Just me and Chi-Chi. Just me and my dog. Veering off course. See, what it is I started little. I started with these little... I dipped my toe in the pool just to test the temperature of the water out, right? I was told that I could manifest things. Okay, I'm going to test that shit out. Manifest things. Manifesting is bringing something into your reality by using your imagination, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your feelings. It's magic, essentially. Thinking something into existence. I'm going to test that out. And I did test it out. I've talked about it many times. Very long list of tests and trials where I had to see, like, is there something to this? And it turns out, yes, there is. Yes, there definitely is. I'm learning that our minds are far more powerful than we've been led to believe, than I thought possible. There have been some pretty miraculous things that have happened in my life that are unexplainable. Synchronicities that I can't explain. And as I've been on this journey, since I decided to start testing out the limits of the game, I started taking these little leaps of faith, trusting that the mechanisms of the universe, or God, or the angels, or whoever the fuck is leading me on my journey. Shout out to my mystery crew that are guiding me and helping me on the other side. They encourage me to pursue this. Because in pursuing this, in taking these wild leaps of faith, I'm learning that, in fact, everything does work out. There are two caveats that I've learned to that. It always works out, but not when or how necessarily I want it to work out. Those are the two caveats that I've discovered for myself. And once I learn to accept those two caveats, right? That's the fine print. So once I learn to accept the fine print, that it's not going to work out maybe how I want it to, and it's not going to work out when I want it to, but it will work out. Once I come to terms with that, my life gets a lot simpler. It's a lot less for me to worry about. Knowing that somehow, some way I'm going to be taken care of, it allows me to be a little bit riskier, risk my biscuits a little bit more, right? Be a little bit bolder in my leaps of faith. But I had to see it for myself. So I would take a little leap of faith, and then it worked out, and I made a mental note of it. And then I took another leap of faith, and it worked out again. Sometimes it would work out immediately. Sometimes it would work out within a week. Sometimes it would take a couple of months. And when it took longer than a week, Matt Owens would get a little antsy. Right? The human in me would start like tapping my watch, going, okay, where are we at with that miracle? Like, I thought everything was going to work out, and it's not working out yet. And the universe just lovingly smiles. Because I'm like Veruca Salt. I want it now. And so I'm currently, for those of you that know my life and have been following me and following these broadcasts that I'm making, I'm currently mid-leap. I took a leap about a year ago, and it was the biggest leap to date. But it was a calculated leap, because I had analyzed every single time that something quote-unquote bad happened to me, that the universe threw something in my path, an obstacle for me to get over. And I took detailed notes every time so that I could recall it. And there wasn't one time that it didn't work out, that I jumped off the cliff and it didn't work out. There was always a net waiting for me, a divine golden net. And so I'm currently mid-leap on my biggest leap to date, my leap of faith. And as I'm falling through the air, like Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole, this endless rabbit hole seemingly, it's an abyss where I'm completely surrounded by darkness. But because I've been in this darkness before, because I practiced being in the nothing, outside of my comfort zone, where it used to scare the shit out of me, now because I've jumped this cliff so many times, it's like an old friend. I smile and embrace the darkness now, knowing that I'm about to be caught, and it's all going to work out. And to people in my life or people listening to this may think that sounds insane, because they haven't experienced that in their own life, perhaps. A few years ago, before I started this process of leaping, wandering well outside of my comfort zone as often as I can, getting used to it, it's not scary to me anymore. It may be scary to people on the outside looking into my life going, holy shit, dude, what are you doing? As I run towards a cliff with a smile on my face, I understand why people think that looks insane. But I know there's a net waiting for me at the bottom of this thing. And so I jump. Because I know that as I'm falling in the abyss, that it's a gift. It's a gift that everything that was no longer serving me is stripped away in the fall. My fears fall off of me. And every time that I leap off of this thing, this cliff, I become stronger and closer to becoming invincible and unstoppable. Because I've trained myself to not react as I run towards my fears. And it took years and a lot of practice. But I've dedicated my life to this. This is my life because I'm realizing that if this is an illusion, if this all is not as it seems, I believe that perhaps this is for the enrichment of my soul. That who I am at the very core of me is loving every minute of this. That this is for the unfolding, the enrichment, the growth, the enlightenment of me. The divinity that I truly am is unfolding every time I run towards my fears. And so I'm so thankful for every bump in the road because it's a gift. Rather than cursing the bump in the road, I thank it. Sometimes I thank it as I'm in the fetal position crying my eyes out. That's all right. I'm thankful for these gifts. Because they're making me unstoppable. They're making me invincible. What's not to love about that? Once I get used to running through the fire, I do it enough times, I become fireproof. Nothing can hurt me. My roots run so deep that no wind can knock me down. I often talk about freedom, and this for me is my goal all along is to have nothing rock my boat. I can't even remember the last time that I was angry at something. I've cultivated that. It's not to say that I will never get angry again. It's not to say that I don't have bad days. Every emotion on the spectrum is meant to be experienced and embraced and loved. They are also gifts. When I first started this spiritual journey of mine, I heard a lot of talk about positivity, positive mindset. Turn that frown upside down. And then when I experienced the difficult emotions, depression, anger, frustration, jealousy, I felt like I was failing at this whole spiritual thing because I was experiencing all those bad, yucky emotions, not realizing that they're all meant to be experienced. They're all meant to be embraced and loved. They just want to be seen. And the more that I became thankful for these emotions, these feelings, even the ones that were uncomfortable to me, I came to a place where I realized that these emotions are a part of me. They're a part of who I am. My whole life I had had low self-esteem. I didn't like my body. I didn't like this about myself. I didn't like that about myself. I didn't like that about my personality. I didn't like these emotions. I didn't like that I got depressed all the time. I didn't like that I was X, Y, and Z. I hated all these things about myself. And part of embracing and loving who I am was embracing and loving the emotions that come forth at any given time. When I wake up in a bad mood, or when I wake up feeling deep, dark despair, oh, those are fun days, right? I thank the despair for joining me that day. Because I know that I'll be happy again. But the more that I try to fight despair or depression or whatever, fill in the blank, the more that I try to wrestle with it and fight it and get rid of it and throw it out and cram it down, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It lingers. It just wants to be seen. And so I'm learning to sit with all of my emotions, and the more that I sit with the uncomfortable, prickly ones, I've learned that they don't linger as long. A depression that would last days or weeks, perhaps, is now gone in a few hours. Because I accept my emotion. I accept that I'm in a real bad mood today. I'm not going to try to blame it on anything. Blame it on what I ate the night before, or the weather, or what I saw on Facebook. Why did I say I'm not even on Facebook? Or what I saw on social media, or what this person said to me. No. I'm not going to assign blame to it. I'm just going to accept it. Let it sit next to me for as long as it needs to sit next to me, and know that it will be gone at some point. And not to try to rush it, not to try to brush it away. It's a practice. It's a practice for sure. Because I was programmed, the way that I always did it was, I didn't want to feel those things, bye, go away. I'm either going to drink those feelings away, or smoke those feelings away, or scroll endlessly on Instagram to not think about those things. I don't want to feel yucky today. But life has gotten smoother for me since I've learned to just embrace it and say, thank you. Thank you for this shitty day. You don't have to hide. You don't have to pretend it's something that it isn't. It's a shitty day. I'm having a shitty day today. That's all right. That's all right. That's what's meant to happen today. I'm meant to have a shitty day today. And I'm going to try to embrace it the best I can. I'm probably going to get frustrated. I'm probably going to cry. I'm probably going to yell. I'm probably going to be short. That's fine. The pendulum will swing the other way and another emotion will present itself at some point. These are the ways that I'm testing the limits of the game. What happens if I embrace my emotions? Never done that before. Let's see what happens. Ooh, that had interesting results. Let's try that again. I think it's so interesting because the spiritual world and the scientific world have always been two separate things, at least in modern times, right? And I've been listening to a lot of scientists talk about spiritual things, and it's hard for them often to find the words because they're so left-brained and so logical and so linear. It's difficult for many of these people that I listen to that study things like the nature of reality, things like consciousness, what it is, what does that mean, our abilities while we're here in this reality, psychic abilities, what the human is capable of, astral travel, that sort of thing. And I think that we're coming to a time where science and spirituality are starting to come together. Just the idea that we're living in a simulation, I feel like up until maybe even 5 years ago, nobody was talking about that. And now it's becoming more and more mainstream, where I hear it on mainstream podcasts, not even the weird, wacky ones that I listen to, right? Cheers. Shout out to all the weird, wacky podcasts I listen to. But the mainstream ones are even starting to talk about like, hey guys, I think maybe we're in a simulation. Wouldn't that be wacky? Like it's becoming a part of the ethers, which I find interesting. And I talk about aliens a lot. I always call them aliens, but I feel like that's also a part of the ethers is we're supposed to call them ETs now. Like I've listened to several podcasts and listened to not just spiritual ones, but like mainstream talking about like, well, I think we're supposed to call them ETs now, not aliens. And I'm like, who, according to who? But why is everybody, it's just certain things go out into the ether and it just spreads out into everybody's consciousness. And now it's just something that we talk about now, or we, something we see things in a different way now, like talking about the multiverse. Before the Marvel movies, nobody was talking about a multiverse. Nobody could even comprehend a multiverse. And now people are talking about interdimensionality and stuff. And so it's very interesting, right? But I want to believe, just logically speaking, that there are other species out there. It's a vast universe, right? I also want to believe that there are aliens here now with us. Whether they're interdimensional beings that we can't really comprehend, or Syrians or Pleiadians, or, little green Martians or whatever, maybe all of the above, right? I'm really hoping Vulcans are a real thing because I want to I really want to have a conversation with a Vulcan. So fingers crossed on that one, guys, that we can get a Vulcan on the podcast one of these days. I'm going to try to manifest that, to be honest with you. Big Star Trek fan, guys. Big Star Trek fan. What was I talking about? Oh, I want to believe them in the aliens, but I'm starting to think that if this is all a simulation, perhaps what the governments all know and that they're not telling us is that aliens don't really exist because we're living in a simulation. And perhaps they've been trying to hide it from us. And the fact that aliens were too crazy to talk about, it would, freak everybody out. Maybe 50 years ago it would have, perhaps. But perhaps the real truth that they're hiding is that this reality is not even real, that this God that we've been praying to all of these years, that our religions and our faith and who we are as a person is based on this concept of this God that we worship that perhaps is just a quantum computer on the moon or something, right? That's creating this fucking simulation. I think the idea of aliens wouldn't necessarily freak everybody out at this point. I feel like society has come to the point where we've sort of gotten used to the idea, where it's not as shocking or jarring as it would have been 100 years ago or even 50 years ago or 35 years ago or whatever. But I think the concept that we're living in a simulation and none of this is real and you're essentially just an avatar for some spiritual being that's controlling you on some level that you can't really comprehend with your human mind, I think is perhaps too much for a lot of people. And I understand why. But I think I'm coming to acceptance with the fact that maybe aliens aren't real. Maybe we are just in this simulation. We're just in this little bubble, this Earth universe or whatever. And that maybe there is nothing out there in the simulation, perhaps outside of the simulation or the illusion or the realm or reality or whatever we're in. Outside of this reality, perhaps there are, that's where everything lives, right? So I'm just curious how things are going to unfold, if these extraterrestrials are going to present themselves or if they were never meant to be a part of the simulation. But then I start thinking about how our ancestors and all the weird stories of the flood, the great flood, and the stories of giants, stories in the Bible, and the ancient texts about, aliens coming down. And so it does lend itself to the idea that perhaps there are, species out there other than humans that have interacted with us and will interact with us again at some point. So I'd like to think so, but I'm trying to get myself to a place where I don't attach myself to any particular belief at all. Because once I start attaching myself to it, the human kicks in and it starts becoming a part of who I am, and I latch onto it real hard, and then I start getting real defensive about it, and it starts getting ugly. So I've learned to untangle myself from my beliefs and just let them be in the wind. Maybe I believe the earth is flat. Maybe I believe it's round. Maybe I don't care. Maybe none of this is real, right? My beliefs are sort of free flowing, and I try not to attach to any of them because they could change in a moment. And so that's how I've chosen to live my life. And I feel more free and happy when I think about things that way. So this is what was on my mind today. Let me know if you're playing the game. If you feel like you're playing a different game, I'd love to hear from you, and if you can relate to some of the things that I'm wrestling with and thinking about. And it's fun, real fun being here in this reality, isn't it? But I really think I'm tapping into something here, and I really feel like I'm gaining some level of control of my reality, which a few years ago I would have thought that's an insane thing to say. But because of the things that have happened in my life, these very specific, undeniable things that it's like, well, okay, I can't explain that, but that worked. I love the game more than anything. Even the days that I'm having a rough time and angry at the process, and angry that it's taking so long, and frustration, and I'm just learning patience. I'm getting stronger. I'm thankful for the journey, because whenever I get to the net or the top of the mountain or whatever the next goal is, the next thing I want, I'm just learning to embrace the journey, learning to love the journey, put on my hiking boots, hike up that mountain, even though boulders are falling on my fucking head sometimes. That's all right. Thanks for the fucking boulders. And thanks for you. If you like what I'm doing here, if you want to follow more, follow me on Spotify. Follow me on Spotify. I'm trying to get to 100 followers. So if you want to be a part of that and help me get to my goal of 100 followers, I'd really appreciate it. Love you. Until next time. End transmission.